time I wear this jumper I cry. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I wanted to give you the opportunity to get to know me a little better. So this is a story time. Basically I'm teetotal. I don't drink and I have never really drunk. This story time goes way back when to when I was either 5 or 6 when I met my granddad for the first time, and then he died when I was 8 years old. So when I did eventually meet my granddad, he was the most kind person ever. He showered me in gifts. He absolutely spoiled me rotten. Every time we went up we got sweets, new toys, still have a tea set he bought me, and he was always just so nice. Then as time went on I began to understand that he was actually ill. We had to start visiting him in hospital rather than at his home because he was that poorly. But I didn't know why he was ill or what he was ill with, and I never questioned it. When my dad came in to tell me that he had died, I was extremely upset. I felt that it was my fault that he had died, and I felt like that for a good 7 years, I'd say. As the day that he did die, I was asked if I wanted to go to the hospital to see him. I didn't realise what the situation was. All I knew was that we had to drive for at least an hour to get to the hospital. I didn't want to go on the journey, so I said no, and obviously I never saw him again, and I thought that that was my fault. So then as I grew up, I'm literally talking over 10 years till I was like 16, 17. I kept catching different parts of stories and I was trying to piece it all together. At 16 I sat down with my grandma and I got her to explain fully. In a way I am glad that I did this, as it finally answered so many questions that I'd had, but my grandma having to tell me really did upset her. She didn't sleep the night after, and I'm sorry to her for that, but I am also glad that I now know the truth. I would have hated for things to carry on in my whole life, never know. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not sure. It turns out my granddad was an alcoholic, and that's what killed him. He drank himself to death. I've never actually got the full details on that, and I'm probably going to sound so ridiculous and stupid, but I'm sure it was cancer or like liver cancer or something like that. But it was him drinking alcohol and made it far, far worse. He was banned from flying. He wasn't allowed to go abroad anywhere because he loved an all-inclusive holiday where he could go and get trashed abroad. He went to the airport. They refused him the flight. He went back a few days later and got on a flight. They let him fly the second time. I don't know how he got through, but he did. Anyway, he got to the hotel in the other country and he got smashed. And then apparently he went up to the reception's desk a few days later and said, I need to get on a flight home. They said, I'm sorry sir, your flight is not for a couple more days. We can't get you another flight. Then he said, no, I'm telling you, you need to put me on another flight or I will die in your hotel. So when the receptionist actually realised what was happening and he was severely ill, you could tell by looking at him that he was severely ill, they did put him on a flight back home. As soon as he landed at the airport, I believe he went straight to hospital, and it was only a couple of days later that he passed away. So the reason that I'd never met my granddad until I was 5-6 years old is all linked to the fact that he was an alcoholic. I don't think my father and his sister necessarily had a nice childhood because my granddad was an alcoholic. Obviously there were times where my granddad was a good person to them, but obviously there will have also been times where he wasn't necessarily. This also meant that things weren't on the best terms between my granddad and my grandma. My grandma cut ties with him. She was very happy with a new partner who she later married. Unfortunately I never met him either. He died before I was born. So my grandma and my auntie did cut ties with my granddad, but my dad kept in contact for a bit longer, I believe, and then there was an argument surrounding my older sister. I wasn't born at the time, which led to them driving my granddad back home. He lives about an hour away, and not speaking to him again. Then that was it. We didn't know him, and I was born, didn't know that his son had had another child, and then and then we received a voicemail on the answering phone which was from him, having not heard from him in 6 years, which said, I'm dying. Basically he reached out to us because he was dying, and it's the fact that something bad has to happen like that for you to realise you need to make up. It's like all that time wasted for no reason. Oh, I need to stop wearing this jumper. Every time I wear this jumper I cry. So when my dad found out that my granddad was ill, we then reached out to him. My grandma and auntie decided not to, but we reached out to him, and that's how I got to know him. If he hadn't decided to reach out to us, he would have died, and we might not have even have known that he died. I wouldn't have known him at all. It's only because he picked up that phone to tell us. Anyway, the illness, as far as I believe, didn't stop him drinking. If you take sociology and philosophy, this is where you have to start to question, was it really all my granddad's fault or not? As my granddad's father had also been an alcoholic, so my granddad had been taught the ways from his father, if that makes sense. That was sort of the culture of their time. So obviously, without going into detail, that is sort of the story of my granddad, how I knew him, and sort of knowing that story put me off alcohol a lot. I just don't want to be tempted by it. I don't ever want to be an alcoholic, and even though I know only having a couple of cans here and there isn't going to make me an alcoholic, I just don't want to be tempted by it. I don't want to think, oh, I really fancy a glass of wine, because I just don't need that right now. I've never tasted wine, so I don't crave it. I just fancy a Teetotal or Hellooooooo. Like, even though I know that's really boring, it's less harmful than alcohol, and I think as long as I'm not tempted to, it can't do any damage. So in a sense, it's that I don't trust myself, and it's also out of respect to my family. Even though my family drinks, all of my family do still drink sensibly. They do drink responsibly, and I'm not saying that I will never drink. There have been times more recently where I have been tempted to. I want to go out with my friends and family. I want to be able to go and join in, as I do feel slightly isolated a little bit more. It's no fun being sober one. So I'm not saying that I will never drink. I'm just saying at the time, at the minute, it's probably not in my best interest to. So don't hold me to it, but that is the situation. That is where my head's at the minute. I do feel slightly uncomfortable when I am around people that are drunk, like when my family come in from the pub drunk and they just annoy me, basically. That is life. Thank you for listening to my story time. I am sorry for crying. Thank you for listening. Bye.